Okay, welcome everyone. I think we're going to get started, and as always, would like to give a few minutes to Paul Heathman to say a few things since he was kind enough to sponsor lunch today. So before we get to Jennifer, we'll have Paul say a few words. Thanks, Paul.
You didn't come to hear me, but how about lunch? I win. If I were to ask you how much effort you put in like yesterday, how would you describe that? You might think about how much time you worked. You might think about like how much energy you had for the day. You gave all of it or like half of it. Could you like store some of it to use later? Save it up? Humans are real clever. We came up with this idea a long time ago how to do this. In fact, we can even save it through generations. It's money. And I think this is why it's really important to know who you bank with. Where you keep your money and what they do with it and who they lend it to is important. It is part of the fabric of our community. So, if that idea resonates with you, I'd love to talk to you about banking with Home Trust and letting me help you and your customers make mortgages. The things that Home Trust supports me to do in the community are pretty cool. We, in conjunction with the Home Builders Association, which I'm on the board, and this organization, we got a change made to the Unified Development Ordinance a couple years ago that reduced the requirement for access to a backyard. We call it a flag lot. It was built in that we needed 20 feet of access for many, many years, and we just overlooked it. And the reason for that was that we need fire trucks to get back there. That makes sense, right? The problem was that for many, many decades, we no longer needed that because the fire truck's hoses got to be 150 feet long. But we just didn't make the change. Now, you might have heard conversations about the Unified Development Ordinance being reviewed and changed. And if you've been in Asheville for 10 years, you would remember it from those days too. Little changes like that we can make. That change alone added tens of thousands of new eligible flag lots in the city. Just that one little change. So we're asking council to go back and look at all of the UDO and find other changes like that, things that don't apply to our city or don't need to anymore. And they said they'll get it done in 3 years. Yeah, that's what I said. But we got a new changing of the guard coming, I think, a little bit. So if you've never been to a city council meeting and you want to learn more about it, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to know more about these issues, one of our biggest ones that we're taking on now is this parking requirement. And the state is talking about it too. But right now, a developer that wants to build densely in our city, they're a huge expense, like maybe millions of dollars is parking requirement. And I have a car and I park it, right? But we don't need to add that expense. If developers are willing to build densely in our city and put in bike parking, they believe they can sell those units. It'll help us. Our city will have bike lanes and sidewalks and a bigger tax base. It's okay to urbanize the urban part of Asheville, right? It'll be good for all of us. Anyway, these are the kind of issues that we're talking about. Rachel just got back from Raleigh to talk about this exact same thing on the state level. Do you want to share anything about that conversation?
Well, if you want to involve this at board level as well, we have a legislative committee that sort of tackles these housing issues, and that's what we just came back from Raleigh doing, is meeting with our state legislators in the House and State Senate to promote our housing issues and what our board stands for. So yeah, I encourage you to get involved. and again, work with partners in the community that also support what's important us as realtors.
So like 8 years ago, I got invited by one of our members, Barry Bialik of Compact Cottages. You know, he's a member of LAFSA as well as the Homeowners Association. He pulled me onto a affordable housing advisory committee with the city. And I immediately started seeing that when we show up, things happen. So we really can. Flag lot is just one of many examples of like big changes, little changes that amount to big outcomes. So come to a council meeting if you haven't. Some are more interesting than others. And then the last thing I want to share is I'm also on the board of our beloved AVL Fest. It's called AVL Sounds now. And we decided not to have a real estate agency sponsored, like an exclusive thing, because that was tough to do. We know lots of real estate agents. So we have a Friends of program, and I'll figure out how to share it with you somehow. But it's only $1,500. It comes with some tickets, and you get to be a supporter of AVL Fest as well. So anyway, thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. And an unpaid plug, we started our small business about 14 years ago and have worked with Home Trust since then, and they've been nothing but great to us. So thanks for that. So I'm Jennifer Bauer. I am co-owner and principal geologist with Appalachian Landslide Consultants, and here today to talk to you about landslides. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. I want to start by asking how many of you have been affected by landslides or know someone who has? A lot. Okay. Our community has been through a lot, and I've recently learned through some trauma-informed counselors that maybe it's a good idea to start these talks where I do show pictures of landslides to just let you know that will be happening. And it is totally okay to take care of yourself. If you're feeling things and you need to take care of yourself outside, just do it. Nobody's judging. We have all gone through this experience, and just want to honor that. And then also just to take a moment and kind of ground ourselves here and be prepared to learn. So if you feel comfortable in like lowering your gaze, closing your eyes, and feeling your feet or feeling your seat hits the chair, and just taking a deep breath together and arriving here and knowing that we're safe and we're ready to learn. So thank you all for doing that. So I want to start by showing you a good news example of how landslide information can help people make some informed decisions in our community. So I received this email from a client that we had worked with prior to Helene, and she said, and so she sent this email right after Helene. She said, I'll make this short and sweet. I just wanted to say thank you both, me and Philip Prince, who's one of the geologists who works with us, for your expertise 3 years ago when I asked you to provide help as I was buying properties in the Blue Ridge. Our house and our family were safe, even though Burnsville had many catastrophic mudslides and floods. So many of the properties I had been wanting to purchase that you steered me away from had cataclysmic results or are completely gone now. I cannot thank you enough. You truly saved us. Your work is important, and even if it's only accentuated in big events like these, the daily tasks you do have long-lasting impacts. Wow. When I got that email, I was like, okay, we're doing something right. This is exactly how this is supposed to work. And she not only sent the email, but she sent me a video of what the property looked like prior to Helene. And this was down in Bat Cave. You'll see it's a nice bubbling stream right next to some flat property. There's some cabins nearby. Her house was going to go kind of in that area. And then there's a steep slope back behind with covered in kudzu because it's a Bat Cave area. But kind of a nice place. And she wanted to put a little house right next to the creek. So she hired us, and we took a look at the information that was available on the landslide maps. And we pulled up the North Carolina Geological Survey landslide inventory. And we noticed that, so she wanted to put her house somewhere kind of near the green dot right around in here. And we saw that there were some landslides already mapped in this location. This yellow outline here is one landslide that happened during 2018. There's another little small one here, another one up the stream. And then there were also some landslide deposits mapped in the area, which are places that landslides have come and deposited boulders and soil over time, but we just didn't know exactly when. So we knew this is probably not the best location for a home because of all of these map features in the area, plus the creek was running right through it. We also took a look at our landslide susceptibility model, showing where debris flow style landslides might start. And the purple areas show there's lots of potential areas that could create debris flows in this that were coming right down to the property where she was looking. And so we thought there are probably better places for you to live. We don't advise that this one is a good one. So she decided to look elsewhere, and we helped her find a place that worked out really well for her. She went back after Helene to see what this property looked like, and she sent a video from that as well. And this is where her home would have been, right in this area. You can see all of the boulders, all of the trees. That whole area was probably flooded. The road had been taken out. There was a cut slope failure right behind there, and then a debris flow had come right down and probably would have hit where her home was. So this is an example of how we can use the data that is already available to help people make decisions about where they want to be during these really heavy rain events. And that's why I'm here to help you all learn how to guide your clients when they're making informed decisions about where they want to live too. So I'll give you a little bit of history about the North Carolina geological, or the North Carolina landslide mapping, which kind of tracks my history as well. How many of you were here during Hurricanes Francis and Ivan in September of 2004? A few of you. So you remember all of the flooding. Well, there were hundreds of landslides that happened during that as well. And there were several people killed in Macon County due to one of those. So after that, the state legislature decided to start the landslide hazard mapping program and asked the North Carolina Geological Survey to run that. I, along with 6 other folks, geologists, started working for the state survey. And during the course of that first round of mapping, we mapped Buncombe, Henderson, Macon, and Watauga County. So the counties in blue here. And then in 2011, the state legislature had a change of heart. They cut funding for that program. We were all laid off. And that's when one of my coworkers at the time and I decided that people still needed landslide information, even if the state wasn't going to provide it. So we started Appalachian Landslide Consultants in 2011 and got some nonprofit funding to map in portions of Haywood County, the little watersheds that you can see in green here, and then worked with Jackson County's government to map Jackson County. And then in 2018, there were more landslides that killed someone else, and the state legislature said, no, we do want to fund landslide mapping with the Geological Survey, and this time the NCGS contracted out a portion of that. So our team won that contract, and now we're working with the NCGS to complete mapping. And we've worked with them on Polk, Rutherford, McDowell, Transylvania, and now we're working in Haywood County as part of a United States Geological Survey grant to do not only the landslide mapping, but also public outreach and inclusion of that information for planning and emergency information. So that's kind of the broad story in a real quick nutshell. Prior to Helene, we knew of over 11,400 landslide points in the counties that had been mapped. And you can see there's a few counties that look pretty empty. That's because the mapping hadn't been done, not because there weren't landslides that had happened there. So then Helene happened, and we're in the process of working with the NCGS to map landslides from Helene. And just so far in some of the counties, we know of over 7,000 landslides. And many of these counties have yet to be completely mapped. I mean, most of them have not yet been completely mapped. So I expect there will probably be over 10,000 landslides just from Helene, in addition to all of the other ones that we knew about prior to then. So it's kind of a generational event that we've had this scientific opportunity to learn, but then also provide that information for people who are living here. So today I want to talk to you all about the different styles of landslides that we have in Western North Carolina so that you can understand the terminology that's used, and then that will help you understand how to guide your clients in making decisions about where they want to be. So we'll talk about debris flows, debris blowouts, debris and weathered rock slides, and landslide deposits. And I'll show some pictures of these too. So debris flows, sometimes people refer to these as mudslides or mud flows. These are the ones that we have most of in Western North Carolina, and these are the ones that are the most damaging. They're the ones that start typically up on steep slopes, up kind of like in this scenario, up kind of in the hollows of the topography where water likes to come together. And that water will fill up the soil and saturate it so much that it can't hold it anymore. And it starts letting loose, it slides, and then it starts picking up more soil as it goes down, typically down a drainage, like down a creek. And it will pick up more and more and scour out that soil, and then until it finally reaches a flatter place, and then it will drop all of its load, all of its boulders. Like in this example, it reached this broad flat area and spread out. You can kind of see the dirt spreading there. In this case, this is in Haywood County. It hit a garage, but fortunately, no one was injured here. And these broad flat areas are where we have evidence of landslides happening before. So we see them happening again and again in the same places, which can help us kind of understand how they work. A lot of times these debris flows will start in pretty shallow soil. Like in this example, you can see it's only a couple of feet thick up near the top, and that lighter color, that's all bedrock under there. So it's pretty shallow soil with steeply dipping bedrock that it has a pretty smooth surface that's steep, and that soil just doesn't have anything to hold on to when it's wet. So those are the debris flow style, and we have some that happen on natural slopes like this one where there has been no road building, no human interaction with the slope at all. And then we also have ones that happen on constructed slopes. And this is an example of one that started in a fill soil that was on top of some bouldery soil. And this cabin had been up on this slope for 30 years or more, but the contractor decided to extend the deck. And when they did so, they thought they had put the piles down into bedrock, but what they were actually hitting were boulders. And they had yet to put gutters on this deck. And so it was the overhang was just shooting all of that water from Helene right down onto that fill soil. And that soil was not meant to hold that. So it let loose and it took off down the slope, and immediately down below them was this 2-story garage. Well, the landslide hit the garage and it actually took out the whole bottom story and the 2 cars in it. Fortunately, the garage was detached from the home, so nobody was injured. And the house, the structure itself was okay, but they had to figure out what to do with this garage. So constructed slopes can also play a role if they aren't constructed properly or if water isn't managed. So another style of landslide that we have doesn't pick up the soil and erode it. It kind of just flows over the top, but it still has a lot of power. And these folks were brave enough, I guess is the right word, to stand out on their porch and take a video of this, what we call a blowout. And it's almost like the soil is actually kind of blowing out of the slope. You'll see this video. It's impressive. Turn the sound on. But it just almost like it explodes out of the ground. And it has so much pressure that you can see here the garage has been torn from the side of the house. Yeah, I don't think I would be standing out on the deck. But I'm grateful that they did, and now we have this evidence of how these things work because we knew about them. And they come from these little tiny source areas. They don't scour the grass, like the grass has just been flattened down, but all that mud came across and had enough power to push that garage. Yeah. So this blowout came from this little source area right here. It's probably 30 feet wide or something. And groundwater plays a really big role in these kinds of landslides. The pressure must just build up, and then it all lets loose and liquefies the soil all at once. And we've seen houses that have been destroyed by these blowouts. It's pretty crazy. So when you get 30 inches of rain, a lot of groundwater is flowing through the slope, and in some places it just can't hold it. So another type of landslide that we see is one where the soil itself doesn't break apart and flow. It stays together in blocks and moves kind of like a solid block or a few blocks down the slope along a slide plane underneath. And we call these slides, debris slide if it's in kind of loose rock, or weathered rock if it's in rock that has turned to soil. And so you look at an air photo of this area and you're like, oh, no, I really don't see a whole lot going on. Well, one of the tools that we like to use is called LiDAR. And this is topography that's generated by flying an aircraft over the ground and shooting lasers down at the ground and getting millions and millions of points that have lat and long and then elevation. And you can see really detailed topography because of this. Like, they will fly it over and it'll shoot off of trees and buildings, and some of the points will get to the bare ground. And then they can do a computer process to remove all of the trees and houses. So it's like having X-ray vision through the forest canopy to see what the ground looks like. We use this tool all the time to look at the slope. And in this area, you can see there's quite a significant difference between the area that's outlined in yellow and, say, the ridge next to it that's nice and smooth. This is quite bumpy. There's some breaks in the ground right here. And the house is actually right here. You can see it's kind of blurry. That's because they've processed the house out of it. So this was in 2017, this LiDAR we had is in 2017. It was flown after Helene as well. And so we have that too. If you look real close, you can see, look up in this area, you'll see a little bit of a change. It's like a shift. So we went out there thinking, oh, this must have moved during Helene. Well, we talked to the people and they said, actually, we had mud come down in our backyard during Tropical Storm Fred in 2021. So it shows us things have changed. It doesn't tell us exactly when it's happened, but it still gives us a good sense of what has moved over the last 6 years or so. But so now we have this tool where we can take one layer of the LiDAR and subtract the other layer and then paint the places that have dropped down in red and then the places that have increased in elevation in blue, kind of like this image is showing us here. The landslide happens between the two vintages of LiDAR. The red places are where the elevation's lower, the blue is where it's come up. And then we can use this LiDAR change to really see where things have moved, which is pretty cool. Like, you can see where the upper portions drop down is all in red here. Where the bottom of the slope is bulging up, that's all in blue. Their home is here. Something else we noticed was these little red areas up in here, which we had not seen before. So we went out into the field and there's actually a little crack in the ground up there. And these folks, they didn't know that this whole hillside was moving, because during Fred, they just had some mud come down in their backyard. They didn't realize that the whole hill slope was moving down. They do still live there, and I think they're okay, but we told them any heavy rain events, go stay with your son somewhere else. So they are aware.
What is the distance of this?
So the scale there, you can see 200 feet. So it's probably 400-ish long. Yeah. So that's the crack at the top. And then if you look kind of in the middle, you'll see it's kind of bumpy and rough. The evidence of that in the field looks like these trees that have leaned backwards because the slope is slowly sliding. So the trees are moving with that. And then down at the bottom, it kind of looks bulgy. It almost looks like the soil is overriding the grass in that area. But it's so slow moving that they haven't really had any impacts from it. So I think they're okay. But we did tell them, anytime it's going to be raining really hard or the hurricanes are predicted, go stay somewhere else. They're like, yep, totally fine with that. So, yeah. So that's a debris slide. And then this one, another example of weathered rock slides where you can kind of see that the ground has torn apart but not completely mobilized. It's just kind of sliding down the slope. These are an example of a weathered rock slide on a farm field where over in Haywood County. So we also like to take a look at where landslides have deposited their material over time, because that gives us a sense of where something might happen in the future. So there's some really big old landslide deposits coming off of the Swannanoa Mountains. This is I-40, and this is I-70, Swannanoa, or Black Mountain is over here. And there's this really nice, broad, big, flatter areas that people love to put their homes on because it's not crazy steep. These are all old landslide deposits. And one thing that we know is that the landslides like to be deposited in similar areas where they have before. So what we're seeing from Helene is that there were landslides that started up in these steeper slopes up above, and they typically will follow the creek that oftentimes is running along the edges of these deposits. So those are areas where we're seeing the Helene ones, like in this photo, all the boulders here are from a Helene landslide, but they're cutting through this old landslide deposit. And when we looked at that, what it had cut through, there were lots of different vintages of deposit that had been put down. So many landslides, many debris flows over time can come in the same area. So when we look at the deposits, not all of it is a bad place to be. It's primarily where the creeks, kind of along the creeks where they connect up with the steep slopes. Those are the worst places because those are the more likely pathways of these landslides. Not to say that something couldn't break out from the creeks, because we've seen that too, but right along the edges is where we're really paying the most attention. So I wanted to give you all some things for you to look at, because I don't want to just tell you all about this and you'd be like, man, this sucks. I want to give you some resources so you feel supported, because this is just the reality of living in the mountains. I'll show you some things for you all to look at when you're deciding if you even want to take a listing, or if your buyers are like, I love this place, you can look at it with a little bit more discerning eye. And when you see these things, you can refer them to someone who can give them more information. One of the things that we do is provide property evaluations for people who are concerned about their steep slopes. So, and it's not like if you just see one of these, it means something is going on. But if you see a few, then that might indicate when it's a good time to call a professional to evaluate the site. So one of the things to look out for is cracks in the ground. Like this example here, this homeowner had some cracks in his backyard because the outside edge of this fill had not been compacted in this neighborhood. And so it's just starting to slowly move down. Another thing that we try and take a look out for is structural damage. If you start to see leaning deck posts, a lot of times the house will be put on good bedrock. You know, they'll make a cut into the rock. They'll put the house foundation onto the cut portion of that, but then they take all that soil and push it on the other side, especially older construction. Now I think they do a better job of compacting it, but sometimes they will just push it over and then the deck footers will go into that loose fill and then the deck footers will start moving. So we look for any signs of the deck posts leaning back. We look for cracks in the structures itself, and it could be a structural thing. It could be a ground slope thing. And sometimes the inspectors will note these. So if they note kind of a pattern of that happening, it might be that it's actually the ground, not just the structure. So just things to think about. If you see an abundance of curved or leaning trees, that can mean that the ground is moving, because trees like to grow straight to the sun. Unless there's something in their way, they will grow straight. But if the ground is moving, then their trunks will start curving, kind of like the butt of a pistol, like this one has here. So if you see a whole bunch of those, it could be that the ground is slowly moving. This one is actually cracking because the ground is beneath it is cracking. It's moving so quickly that the tree didn't have time to adjust. It just started splitting in half, which was pretty crazy. Other things to look out for is activity on other surrounding properties could, especially if they were constructed similarly, might mean it's a good time to have it evaluated. Can anybody see the crack in the ground on this picture? Yeah, I can give you a zoom in. You see it? Well, here it's this really faint crack here. This is where it's cracking at the top, and then down here is where it's kind of running over the grass, bulging down at the bottom. So, you know, if you were looking at purchasing a structure downslope of this, you would definitely want to take a look around and see what's going to happen around there. So Another thing that you can use to help you make decisions and you can point your clients to are the landslide inventory and susceptibility maps. And there are lots of different online map viewers out there. One is the North Carolina Geological Survey online map viewer. And I think if you go to, I think it's Landslide, ncgs.org, something like that. Will take you to the online map viewer. I should actually put the link on there.
What's it? Landslide?
I think it's Landslide NC or landslide.ncgs.org. It will take you to a link to the online map viewer. And that one is all pre-Helene inventory. They're working on getting it merged together. There are lots of other options as well. If you're working in parts of Haywood or Jackson County, we have that mapping on our website, AppalachianLandslide.com. And we've got a user's guide that kind of walks you through how to use the maps as well. On the Buncombe County GIS, how many of you have seen the landslide layers on the GIS? Yeah. So that's an option. That's an older model that was created when I was there. That the state's using a new model now. But really, I'll show you. And then Henderson has the landslide data on their GIS, Transylvania, and Polk do too. So this is what the NCGS online map viewer looks like. It has, right now, they have points with information in them, and then outlines that show where the landslides have impacted, like relatively recent landslides. And then they also have the landslide deposits. They're kind of this built-in tan color. They also have what they call the channelized debris flow susceptibility model, which shows where the debris flow style landslides might start and where they might scour, but it does not show where they might deposit their material, like where they might go. So you have to use the model in conjunction with the deposits to know any downslope areas that could be impacted by landslides. And they're working on a new model that might combine everything into one, but that science is still evolving. So right now we just have to piece things together or call somebody. And really what it means is if your property of concern is in or very close to anything that is colored on this map, then site-specific evaluation is warranted. That's all you guys need to know. You don't need to know how it was created or any of that stuff. Just make it simple.
GIS.
This is the North Carolina Geological Survey's online map viewer. Okay, so then I put in a screenshot of the maps that are on our website as well. We've got the points differentiated into ones that, landslides that happen on slopes that were modified or constructed by humans versus ones that are natural. And the natural ones are in green. The modified ones are in red. You can see that humans are doing a great job of helping things get to the ocean. So, but these are also the ones that we can do something about. Like we can make sure things are engineered properly. We can make sure the water is taken care of to help keep the slopes that we're building where they are intended to be. We have a model that we use that shows where these debris flow style landslides might start as well. It's these purple areas. And the model performed really well. We created this prior to Helene, and the Helene landslides, almost all of them started in that purple area. So we've got a pretty good handle on where we think they might start. And then the teal areas show where they might go. And this is similar to the Buncombe County model that you'll see the potential debris flow pathways. But these teal areas show where the landslides might travel down the drainages. And the one place that they need some work is where things spread out the bottom, because it's just really hard to model that. But now with machines doing a lot of the learning, we're hoping that we can start building better models. We're working on some of those ourselves too. But you'll notice that this landslide, it all happened within an old landslide deposit here that had been mapped. So that's really the key, is seeing where things have happened before will likely tell you where things could happen again. This is just a screenshot of the Buncombe County GIS. They do have slope ordinances that are based on this stability index map. Some of the guidelines say that if you're within one of these purple areas, you need to have a site, a global stability analysis performed by a geotechnical engineer. And that tells you, is this place where the house is going to be okay, stable, which I think is great for new construction. I think there's room for improvement because the ordinances don't say you need to look what's happening upslope or downslope that could impact the property. So I recommend that is something that you all suggest to your clients as well. If there's one of these purple areas near the property, it might be good to have an evaluation to see if there's anything up there that could come down. And then the same debris flow pathways I was talking about is on Buncombe County. Henderson has a similar inventory and deposits, as well as those debris flow pathways that show you where the landslides might go. And Transylvania, similar. Polk, similar. I don't need to go through them all. But again, if you're in any colored area, you might need a site-specific evaluation. So other things that you can look out for, have your clients think about when they're looking at properties, is thinking about where is water flowing. Like, does the HOA have a stormwater maintenance plan? Can they clean the ditches out every year? Because plugged up ditches and culverts cause so many landslides when the water just flows over the edge, and that fill slope isn't meant to hold it. Same with extending gutters. We tell almost every single client, extend your gutters. If they are just right over the edge on that fill soil, there's so many cases that we've seen. Like this one, for example, we went out there prior to Helene, and he's on a steep slope. He has a beautiful view, and he said, what can I do to make sure my slopes stay stable? And we said, extend your gutter drains. And so we called us back after Helene, and he said, I've had this big landslide. What can I do to make sure my slopes stay stable? I said, extend your gutter drains. This little piece right here is where his gutter drain was, right at the top of this landslide. That will probably cost him $250,000 to fix now. So it is worth extending gutter drains. Even if your buyers don't want to pay for it, it's worth it.
How much does the site evaluation cost?
Site evaluations are, depending on if they just want to talk about it through a verbal report or a written report, they start around $650. And then depending on property size, it goes up from there. So this homeowner is an example of extending the gutter drains appropriately. Unfortunately, it's a little too late because there are cracks in their foundation here where the outside edge of the house is starting to drop down a little bit. I also recommend that septic drain fields not be placed on steep slopes if at all possible, or at least not upslope of anything that you don't want to be impacted. This is one example of one that failed during Helene, and the slope failed right along where the septic drain lines were going. And it closed this road and blocked everybody in this neighborhood in until they could get the road opened. So septic fields are something else that we pay attention to where they're being put. And other things that we look out for that you can help your folks think about is establishing vegetation. You can see here, a lot of these slides happen on the nice grassy field, no trees. Tree roots really make a big difference when it comes to slope stability. Maybe not in 30 inches of rain, but when you get those 5-inch rains, they make a big difference. Also, fixing failing slopes, and I show this one again as an example of remediating this prior to it failing completely can be less expensive than having to do it afterward. And I also wanted to give you guys a little pop quiz. What else should they do? Yes. And one of the biggest things I think it's important for all of us who live in the mountains to do is be aware of the weather. We worked with some social scientists that interviewed folks after Helene, and they were like, yeah, I didn't even know something was happening, or wasn't aware that this was going to be this big. But the Weather Service told us what was happening. So finding an app that can really give you the truth, and a lot of, if you get the National Weather Service information, they're going to tell it to you. And they've worked with us to help identify thresholds to let people know, like, landslides are a possibility. And you all don't need to know all of this. Just know if they're talking about 5 inches of rain within 24 hours, that's when landslides can start happening. Just like a couple of weeks ago when they started happening again in Bat Cave and Chimney Rock, they got right around 7 inches of rain. So it's the 5-inch threshold where we're starting to see things move. So just real briefly, we're all living in the mountains here. Things that you can do and your clients can do during heavy rains to protect yourself is stay off the roads. The roads are often what are failing. So if you know rains are coming, be where you're going to be. Hopefully it's not in one of those mapped areas, since you already know where the mapped areas are. And then there are things that if you have decided to stay in your home, but it's in one of those areas, that you can see if is the ground starting to move. Are there big crashing noises that you can hear? Do you see the creek that's next to you getting muddier? If so, it could be that a landslide is happening. Despite human curiosity, wanting to get out there and video it, stay in the safe home. Unfortunately, I know of at least 4 people who were killed whose homes were safe, but they were outside and they got hit. So stay in your home. You're more likely to survive, especially if you're on a top level on the side of the house that's away from where the landslide could hit. There's been research that has shown people who are up there are more likely to survive. And we've seen so many people in our communities survive the landslides too. So more research is coming on that, but yeah. Let's see. And well, for example, this is one in Maggie Valley that was hit in in the early 2000s. And this home was 3 stories, and the wife was in the top story. The husband was in the middle story, and this happened about 11 o'clock at night. This slope back behind failed. It was a fill slope that had been covered up. There was a spring there, and it failed and hit their home, and they walked out with just a broken nose and some bruises. It's miraculous, but yeah. So, but their basement was full of mud. So going up is the way to do it. So we want to be a resource. I recognize as realtors, you guys have a lot going on, and we want to be one of the folks that you can refer people to if they have questions or if they want their property evaluated. Like this example here, someone was looking to build in one of these areas that was really bouldery and not a great place. And we went out there and noticed this little scar in the LiDAR here that you can see. These are all levees of boulders from a debris flow that came down. And I haven't updated this slide, but there were actually 2 more after Helene. They came down very close to where this man wanted to put his house, and we think that he's put it elsewhere based on our recommendations. So hoping we can help provide safe locations for people looking to build or buy or just be in the mountains. Yeah. Thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it.
Any plans to map UNC and Geological counties, either by the state or privately?
I know that there are plans to map the Helene landslides
Okay.
For those counties. Yeah, and that's happening now. Yeah, I don't know if the county by county model will be happening anymore. I think they're actually looking into some machine learning and using some of the data that we've mapped to train the computer to map these things. So, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Add on to your gutter and drain. We had our gutters professionally installed, but they pitched them all to one part of our house. So that's where our trees fell. So make sure your pitch on your gutters is distributing properly.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you could even, you could put a cistern in if you want to use it as rainwater, and then you're not even saturating the slope.
We put in a dry well because we kept having this wet area and just thinking, oh, it's our soil. So we put in a dry well, but it was just all the water from our house going to one area.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Question.
Sure.
I'll try to just put them all together. One, what is the best way to describe to our clients the cost of an evaluation? Two, since we have to decide when the diligence period is, when we're making an offer on a property, what sort of timeline is usually needed for this, to have an evaluation? And third, are there any specific types or breeds of vegetation that you recommend people plant onto slopes to help maintain?
Sure. So cost wise is, like I mentioned, they start around $650 if it's relatively close to Buncombe County. We'll go anywhere. It just costs more because it takes us long to get there. And then for a report, it's usually 1,000 more than the verbal. So for a written report, it might be 1,600, 1,650, something like that. And then if that's for like a 2-acre parcel or less. If it's larger than that, then it takes us more time, so it costs more. As far as due diligence, it usually takes us maybe a week or two to get it scheduled, and then another week at least to get the report out. But we can do, like yesterday, I did a video call with a client whose due diligence period was today, but I haven't gotten a report to him yet, but I told him everything I was going to tell him just on a video call. And then I can actually talk through like, here's what the maps say, here's where things could happen. So it's a little easier to understand. So we can do that too. And then as far as vegetation goes, trees with roots that spread are really beneficial. And the North Carolina Cooperative Extension, the Henderson County office, has a slope stability website that talks about the best grasses to plant and the best plants to plant. And that's where I refer people. I'm a rocks person. Yeah. The cooperative extension, they've got good people who know about slope stability and vegetation. Yeah.
There's something that stood out to me. This is the second time I've heard your presentation, which I love. Is that you said if it happened once, it'll happen again. Something I hear, like when I'm touring properties, well, if it made it through Helene, it's probably fine.
Yeah.
How would you expand on that conversation? Go to your maps. Go to the maps.
Go to the maps. Yeah, I think in some cases that could be true.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, there could be something that has shifted a little bit that hasn't failed yet. And we've seen some of that with the LiDAR change. We can see where things moved a little bit, but didn't completely evacuate. So it's like we have this magic tool now where we can see the ground and what's moved. So maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been, so where did Helene change how water is flowing? And is it now flowing on a slope that it wasn't originally intended to flow on? And could that then destabilize over time if it's gotten like over steepened? You know, the rivers cut the sides of the river valleys in so many places to where there's so much steeper now. Could that then start failing? So it's kind of it depends.
Right.
I know they don't want to hear that.
Exactly. So just go to the maps. That's going to be.
Yeah.
Because the blowouts.
Those are really hard.
Yeah.
And they're hard to model too, because they don't always happen in the concave areas like the debris flows do. Some of it could be on planar slopes or convex slopes. And we don't know how to model where groundwater is happening. But we do find it that they're typically in areas where you have a lot of springs already.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of springs, then something to be aware of.
I know a lot of people look for properties with springs because they love the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know.
Just don't be downslope from it.
Yeah.
Put your house below the ridge and let the spring do its thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a reiteration of something that you already said or what Rachel asked, but what counties would it be fair to say do not have accurate maps right now then, like that we would be working in? So like Yancey and Mitchell.
They won't have the deposit maps.
Okay.
And they won't have a full like pre-Helene inventory.
Right.
And the post-Helene inventory, it's public, but it's hard to get to. You have to have like a ArcGIS online account. And But you can talk to the Geological Survey, or we have access to that since we're working in it. So you can ask us, and we've been out there. We've been all over the place.
Okay.
So we may have firsthand knowledge of it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, we do a lot of work in that area already, so.
One more. This may be totally out of your realm, but when you're looking in an area where there was obviously a slide and engineers and contractors have been there and they've done work, what's something that could give client assurance in how work was done, what?
If it's something that was engineered, then there should be kind of like a construction completion report that the engineer has stamped that says this was constructed in accordance with my design, and I witnessed the construction, or monitored it. So there should be some kind of engineer's report finalizing it.
Like
Yeah.
the homeowner association had work done, engineer would have had to be involved, I would assume.
Right after Helene, there was a lot of.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
There was a lot of. I know a grading contractor
and
and.
fixing what I could.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So there might be, and DOT is dealing with this now. They were just trying to get it open. And then now they're getting funding for doing the right way. Yeah. So there's probably a lot of homeowners associations dealing with that too.
Right.
So there may be areas that continue to move until it can get the proper treatment or get the proper, a lot of it's just routing the stormwater correctly. Yeah, making sure the culverts are big enough to handle the water flow.
And those massive blocks that look like they're just ready to roll.
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned that the Buncombe County GIS website is a little outdated. Which maps was it all the maps related to stability and debris flow? And if so, you recommend going to which sites instead for Buncombe County?
I still like the Buncombe ones. I think they do a fine job.
Okay.
They overpredict where things might start a little bit.
Flow pathway has been there for years, and I know Helene was an exception for sure, but many places slid that, and it's because I guess trees and all that, the debris was so massive it was rerouting.
Yeah, and the debris flow pathways, it's a narrow path. It doesn't spread out like debris flows do.
Right.
So, but I think the Buncombe County maps, like I was saying, they probably overpredict a little bit on the steep slope side of things. Like these the upper portions of the pathways probably don't need to be quite that wide, but where they go is still very valid. Like I like that part of the model.
So it's based on the older model, but it's actually you're not nervous about under predicting.
No.
It's more so over.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but it's more on the safe side. So yeah.
For a customer that was listing or selling, rural and maybe doesn't have access to funds for something for a survey like this, is there any access to like some money for grants or maybe you just mentioned starting a business on maybe some nonprofit? Is there any like access to funding for someone to get a report?
I don't know if there is for someone who hasn't had some kind of landslide issue, but I know there's some like community recovery groups that, like in Henderson County, we've worked with the United Way, who is helping people who've had slope failures. And I think up in Yancey, there's a similar group. In McDowell, there's a similar group. So there's those types of places. And I don't know. Let me know. I mean,
if
I
you were
can.
in someone's house and you identified as like a crack or something in the ground, folks didn't have, they were trying to sell their house and didn't have any much information, some access.
Maybe there might be, yeah. But finding it could be hard too. Unfortunately.